contract says you are not allowed to travel outside.
If you're planning any international travel in 2026, stop what you're doing and listen up. There are several big changes to passport and border rules that went into effect this year and could derail a trip if you aren't prepared. In this video, I'll break down the new rules for the United States, Russia, and several other major destinations, explain what they mean for you, and give a practical checklist so you don't get turned away at the airport. First, the United States. The biggest near-term change that affects a lot of travelers is the tightening of real ID enforcement and a new alternative verification option from the TSA. Beginning February 1, 2026, travelers who do not present a real ID-compliant driver's license or another acceptable ID may face an alternative screening option that includes a fee, widely reported as a $45 Confirm ID screening fee for those without compliant ID. The official guidance from the TSA and multiple news outlets stressed that passports remain a valid form of ID for domestic travel and will exempt you from that fee, but the bottom line is this. If your state ID isn't real ID compliant by early February, carry your passport. What does that look like for viewers? If you're a U.S. resident and you plan to fly domestically this year, take one of two steps now. Either get a real ID-compliant state ID from your motor vehicle office, or simply use your passport as your primary ID at airport security. Also plan for possible extra screening time if you end up in the confirm.id lane. Some reports say it could take 10 to 30 minutes. Next, Russia's several important entry and passport-related changes roll across the end of 2025 into 2026. One headline change, new rules affecting minors. From January 20, 2026, children under 14 will generally only be allowed to enter or leave Russia with passports. Birth certificates will no longer be accepted for border crossings for many scenarios. That's a major procedural shift for families traveling with kids. If you travel to or from Russia with children, double-check that every child has a valid passport, not just a birth certificate. Also, expect Russia to expand and modernize visa or e-visa and entry processes. E-visas have been extended in validity and allowed stays in some categories, and Russia has been rolling out new pre-entry electronic registration and biometric steps for some visitors. Several official and travel industry notices in late 2025 and early 2026 reflect these changes, so verify the exact e-visa rules for your nationality before booking. A related and important Europe-facing point. Several EU countries and Germany in particular adjusted rules around Russian passports in 2026. For example, Germany and other Schengen states have signaled that biometric travel documents will be required in many circumstances for holders of Russian passports beginning in early 2026, meaning non-biometric passports or older styles may not be accepted for entry. If you hold a Russian passport or plan to travel with someone who does, confirm passport type requirements with the destination embassy. Now, let's zoom out, Europe and other global changes you need on your radar. The EU's new entry or exit system, EES, which replaces passport stamps for most non-EU visitors and captures biometric data, began rolling out in late 2025 and continues through 2026. The EES requires facial and fingerprint data at border control via automated kiosks or booths and stores the entry or exit record digitally. This won't replace your passport, but it does mean biometric checks at Schengen borders are becoming standard and failure to comply can mean denial of entry. If you're heading to the Schengen area this year, expect biometric processing and slightly different queuing at passport control. Other countries are also adjusting their digital and biometric requirements. Several nations are expanding electronic travel authorizations, like ETA or ESTA-style systems, and digital arrival forms. Some tourist taxes and shorter-term visa schemes have been introduced or updated as part of broader border control modernization. Those changes tend to be country-specific, so the safest rule of thumb is, check the destination government's official travel pages or your airline before you travel. There's also a geopolitical wrinkle worth knowing. Russia recently opened temporary visa-free windows for certain nationalities. For instance, expanded short-term visa-free access for many categories of Chinese citizens in late 2025. That doesn't affect passport validity directly for other travelers, but it does show how quickly entry regimes can change with diplomatic developments. So keep an eye on news and embassy notices in the weeks before travel. Okay, Practical tips. Here's a compact travel checklist to save you from last-minute chaos. Passport validity. Many countries require passports to be valid for at least 6 months beyond your planned departure date. Always check the exact rule for the destinations on the embassy website. Children and minors. If traveling with children, confirm whether a passport is now mandatory. For example, Russia's January 20, 2026 rule limiting birth certificate use. Don't rely on older documents. Real ID versus passport. U.S. domestic flyers. If your state ID is not Real ID compliant, bring your passport to avoid the alternative screening fee and delay. If you don't have a passport, consider applying early or ensure your state ID is upgraded. Biometric readiness. Expect to provide facial biometric data or fingerprints in places implementing ES or other biometric border systems. Make sure photos in your passport are clear and that your passport's chip, if biometric, is intact and undamaged. E-authorization and arrival forms. Many countries require pre-registration, e-visas, or digital arrival forms. Don't assume visa-free status without a quick check. Some systems also have short lead times for application. Double-check airline and transit rules. Airlines enforce entry requirements at check-in. If you lack the required travel document, the airline can refuse boarding even if you thought border control would be lenient. Always verify before airport arrival. Finally, a few quick FAQs I get asked all the time. Can a damaged passport get me denied boarding? Yes. Passports with missing pages, significant water damage, or a broken chip can be rejected. If your passport is worn, renew it before traveling. This advice is universal. Check your country's passport office for specific damage thresholds. Are visas or passport rules being relaxed anywhere? Some countries have liberalized short-term entry for certain nationalities, like temporary Chinese visa-free access in Russia during late 2025. But most of the big 2026 headlines are about stricter ID enforcement, biometrics, and digitized entry systems. Always check the embassy page for the precise, current rules. How far in advance should I renew my passport? If you have less than 6 months validity before a trip, renew now. Processing times vary by country and season, so don't leave it to the last minute. 2026 is the year travel becomes more digital and more biometric. For U.S. residents, the Real ID or Confirm. ID changes mean passports are now an even more practical insurance policy for domestic flying. For Russia and many European countries, expect stricter documentation for minors, more biometric checks, and faster policy changes tied to diplomacy. The Smart Traveler checks embassy guidance 7 to 14 days before departure, carries the correct physical passport, and saves copies of key documents in both cloud and offline formats. If you found this useful, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I'm pulling together a printable checklist and a short social post you can save to your phone. Drop a comment if you want country-specific checklists. I can do the US, Russia, UK, Germany, and Schengen next. Safe travels, and don't let 2026 new rules surprise you at the gate. Bye for now.